Nearly 70% of registered voters told the Wall Street Journal-NORC that the idea that if you work hard, you will get ahead no longer holds true, or never did. That was a July 2025 survey. It was the highest percentage in nearly 15 years of asking the question, and 23% of respondents did not even say the dream had died. They said it was never real. It was never real. And in February of this year, Gallup published its National Health and Well-Being Index and found that the percentage of American adults who expect to have a high-quality life in 5 years dropped to 59.2%, the lowest level since Gallup began measuring it nearly 2 decades ago. Since 2020, future life ratings have fallen a total of 9.1 percentage points, which projects to approximately 24.5 million fewer Americans who are optimistic about the future compared to 5 years ago. 24.5 million people lost their optimism. Not their jobs, not their homes. Their belief that things could get better, and when you lose that belief, you stop trying. You stop saving for a down payment on a house you know you will never be able to afford. You stop contributing to a retirement account that will never grow fast enough to replace the income you need. You stop applying for the promotion at a company that has not given a real raise in 3 years. You stop believing that the extra hours, the side hustle, the second job, the sacrifice will add up to anything other than more exhaustion. You give up. Not dramatically, not publicly, quietly, in the kitchen at 11 p.m. when the bills are spread across the table and the math does not work and you are too tired to be angry about it anymore. That is what giving up looks like in America in 2026. And it is happening to millions of people who did everything they were told to do and still ended up here. Burnout is not a buzzword anymore. It is a clinical epidemic costing $322 billion a year and nobody is treating it. ComHealth's Workforce Well-Being Report for 2026 documented that employers face what they called a triple whammy: poor employee mental health, higher risk of attrition and productivity losses, and steep increases in healthcare costs. All at the same time, nearly half of employees in the United States and Canada report experiencing high stress on a daily basis. Not occasionally, not during crunch periods, daily. Nearly 1/3 of U.S. employees report feeling burned out often or always, and 1 in 4 employees said they had considered quitting their jobs due to mental health challenges. And the American Consumer Council found that over 64% of employees in a national survey reported feeling overworked, underpaid, and simply exhausted. Burnout-related productivity losses and turnover are costing organizations $322 billion annually, according to the same analysis. $322 billion a year lost because the American workforce is too exhausted, too demoralized, and too stretched to function at capacity. And absenteeism rates are 3 times higher in employees with mental health conditions than those with physical health conditions. And more than half of employees say they are living with chronic conditions, which increase the risk of anxiety, depression, and higher healthcare costs, which creates a cycle that feeds itself. You are exhausted because you are working too much. You are working too much because you cannot afford not to. You cannot afford not to because the cost of everything you need has risen faster than your pay. And the exhaustion generates health problems that generate medical bills, that generate more financial pressure, that generates more hours of work, that generates more exhaustion. The cycle does not have an exit unless the math changes. And the math is not changing. A March 2026 study found that workers are being volunteered for new tasks without their consent in what researchers are calling the voluntold epidemic. 41% of workers admitted to feeling burnt out. Workers reported doing 3 jobs at once in their current roles, and over half had not received a raise or promotion for taking on the additional work. They are doing 3 jobs for the price of 1, burning out, developing health conditions, paying more for the health care to treat those conditions, and being told by management that they should be grateful to have a job. The medieval feudal lord at least provided the serf with a plot of land and protection from invaders. The modern American employer provides a health insurance plan with a $3,500 deductible and a Slack channel that sends notifications at 10 p.m. And AI, which was supposed to reduce workloads, has done the opposite for the majority of workers. Only 7% of employees reported that AI decreased their workload. For 43%, their responsibilities actually increased because of AI. They are now expected to do their original job plus manage, interpret, prompt, and verify the output of AI tools that were introduced to make them more productive. The productivity gains went to the company's bottom line. The additional labor went to the employee's already crushed schedule. And the medical cost trend for employer-sponsored health plans is expected to reach 8.5% in 2026, according to industry projections, which means the health insurance that is chaining workers to their desks is simultaneously becoming more expensive, while covering less. Deductibles have risen from an average of $303 in 2006 to over $1,800 for individuals and $3,500 for families. The employee is paying more for insurance that reimburses less, for conditions caused by the stress of the job that requires the insurance. And if the employee quits to escape the burnout, they lose the insurance. If they stay to keep the insurance, the burnout worsens the conditions that the insurance is supposed to treat. There is no exit that does not cost something the worker cannot afford to lose. 7 in 10 Americans say the American dream is dead, and they are not wrong. 30 years ago, someone working at Macy's could marry someone working at Lowe's, and between them, working 40 hours a week each, buy a house and raise 3 children in their late 20s or early 30s. That is not an exaggeration. That is the documented economic reality of the 1990s. The median home price in 1995 was approximately $130,000. The median household income was approximately $34,000. The ratio of home price to income was 3.8 to 1. A family earning the median could buy the median home with a manageable mortgage at the interest rates available at the time. Today, the median home price is above $420,000. The median household income is approximately $80,000. The ratio is 5.25 to 1. But the ratio alone understates the crisis because mortgage rates in 1995 were around 7.5%, which sounds similar to today's rates of approximately 7%, except that the home cost 3 times more. The monthly payment on a $110,000 mortgage at 7.5% in 1995 was approximately $770. The monthly payment on a $380,000 mortgage at 7% in 2026 is approximately $2,530. The payment tripled. The income doubled. The gap is the American dream, and the gap is getting wider every month. Childcare was $400 per month in 1995. It is $1,100 per month today. Health insurance for a family was $400 per month through an employer. The employee contribution alone is now $500 to $700 per month, and the plan has a deductible that did not exist in 1995. A used car cost $8,000 in 1995. The average used car costs $28,000 today. Auto insurance was $800 per year. It is $2,300 per year today. And college tuition at a state university was $3,000 per year. It is $11,000 per year today. Everything that defined the American dream, a home, a car, children, education, healthcare, has been repriced upward by 200 to 400%, while wages have increased approximately 130%. The gap between what life costs and what work pays has become a canyon, and the people standing at the edge of that canyon are not lazy, they are not unmotivated. They are mathematically excluded from a life that their parents achieved with less education, less credential, less specialization, and less debt. A high school graduate in 1985 who got a job at the local factory could buy a house and raise a family. A college graduate in 2026 with $40,000 in student debt who gets a job at a tech company cannot afford a 1-bedroom apartment in the city where the company is headquartered. You have to be extraordinary today to live an ordinary life. That sentence is not a slogan. It is the economic reality of the United States in 2026, verified by the Urban Institute, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the National Association of Realtors, and the Federal Reserve. And the cruelty of it is that the people who cannot access the dream are still paying for it. They are paying property taxes to fund schools in neighborhoods where they cannot afford to live. They are paying into Social Security for a retirement that the trust fund may not be able to deliver. They are paying student loan interest on a degree that was supposed to guarantee the income that was supposed to fund the life that is no longer mathematically accessible. The debt remains. The degree remains. The monthly payments remain. But the life that the debt was supposed to purchase has been repriced out of reach while the payments continue to arrive on schedule. And the generation that is experiencing this the most acutely, millennials now in their early 30s to early 40s, is the first American generation in modern history to be measurably worse off than their parents at the same age by nearly every financial metric. Lower homeownership rates, higher debt loads, lower net worth adjusted for inflation, fewer children, more anxiety, and less hope. The Wall Street Journal survey found that 46% of Americans said the idea that hard work leads to success used to be true but is not anymore. But 23% said something far more devastating. They said it was never true. Nearly 1 in 4 Americans has concluded that the founding promise of the American economic system was, from the beginning, a lie told to keep people working. Americans are having fewer children because they cannot afford to have them, and the country may shrink for the first time in history. Bloomberg reported that the United States may see its first population decline in 2026. For the first time in the history of the Republic, there may be fewer Americans at the end of the year than at the beginning. And the reason is not war, it is not famine, it is not plague, it is math. 7 in 10 Americans in a 2025 poll said that raising a child is unaffordable, up from 58% just 1 year earlier. That 12-point jump in a single year is one of the fastest shifts in public opinion on family economics ever recorded. The Economic Policy Institute found that childcare now exceeds the cost of in-state college tuition in 38 states and the District of Columbia. The average annual cost of childcare for one child topped $13,000 in 2024, according to Child Care Aware of America, up 30% from 2020. For a family with 2 children in daycare, the annual cost is $26,000, which is more than the average annual rent payment in most American cities outside the coasts. A finance expert told Newsweek that the cost of daycare has become another mortgage, and that families are making the calculation of whether it makes financial sense to even send their children to daycare or whether one parent should quit working entirely. That calculation, for a growing number of American families, is ending with the decision to not have children at all. The birth rate has been declining for years, but the acceleration is new, and it is driven not by a cultural shift toward smaller families, but by an economic reality that makes children a financial impossibility for families that are already unable to cover their existing expenses. A 42-year-old mother in Massapequa, New York, told CBS News that the financial strain of childcare has made her and her husband think twice about having another child. She already has children, she wants more. She cannot afford them, and she is not alone. She is the median American parent in 2026. A person whose desire for family has been overruled by arithmetic. The country that built its identity on the promise that each generation would do better than the last is now producing a generation that cannot afford to produce the next one. And the government's response to this demographic crisis has been to cut Medicaid coverage for children, cut SNAP benefits for families, let ACA subsidies expire, and pass a $4.7 trillion bill that primarily benefits households that are not the ones deciding whether they can afford a second child. And a woman in Alabama explained it in terms that no economist could improve. She said her power bill is $800 to $900 per month, and that Alabama has the 3rd highest power bills in the nation. And she said that she buys the cheapest sausage at Walmart for $2.84 and puts it in everything. Spaghetti, hamburger helper, everything, because it is cheaper than hamburger meat. And she said that some people she knows cannot even do that. They are choosing between making their car payment, paying their car insurance, or having electricity. Not choosing between a vacation and a nicer car. Choosing between having lights and being able to drive to work. In the richest country in the history of the world, families are choosing between electricity and transportation. And a man said he is about to sell everything and start living like the Amish if the economy does not get better, because gas is too high, groceries are too high, everything is too high, and it does not matter if you make $100,000 a year, because $100,000 feels like $15 an hour when every price has been repriced upward by 30 to 80%. He is not wrong, he did the math. And the math says that 6-figure incomes in America in 2026 provide the purchasing power that 5-figure incomes provided a decade ago. The middle class did not disappear. It was repriced into poverty while keeping its job title. Retirement has become a fantasy for most Americans, and the people who cannot stop working are dying on the job. Walter Carpenter is 69 years old. He works at a ski lodge clearing dirty dishes from tables and carrying them up carpeted stairs. He told Time magazine, "I'm broke and poor and still working at 69. But at least I'm still here." Half of the workers at the ski lodge where he works are over 65. Not because they want to stay active in retirement, because they cannot afford to stop. Time documented what they called America's aging workforce and identified a growing class of people who want to stop working but cannot, representing a crack in a social compact that assured citizens who worked hard that they could rest when they hit 65. Harvard professor Lisa Berkman, who has studied older workers for decades, found that about half of Americans are not working full-time through their 50s, and the odds of those people finding good jobs in their 60s are extremely low. She said that when you reach 60, all the inequality that has accumulated over your lifetime comes into technicolor. And the inequality is stark. 40% of Americans approaching retirement have less than $50,000 in retirement savings, according to the Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances. For a person planning to live 20 years past retirement age, $50,000 provides approximately $208 per month. That is less than half of the average electric bill in some states. The average Social Security benefit is $1,907 per month. The average rent in America is $2,100. Social Security alone does not cover rent. $50,000 in savings provides $208 per month on top of the Social Security check. Combined, the retiree has $2,115 per month. Rent is $2,100. That leaves $15 per month for food, healthcare, utilities, transportation, insurance, clothing, and everything else a human being needs to survive. $15 per month. And these are not people who were irresponsible. These are people who worked their entire adult lives in an economy that suppressed wages, eliminated pensions, shifted healthcare costs to employees, and replaced defined benefit retirement plans with 401k accounts that depend on market performance and personal savings rates that were impossible to maintain on wages that did not keep pace with the cost of being alive. A teacher or a municipal worker or a factory employee 40 years ago was guaranteed a good retirement after putting their time in. Today, more people are working service industry jobs that offer no retirement benefits at all, and the people who do have 401k accounts are raiding them to pay for emergencies. The Federal Reserve documented that 401k hardship withdrawals have risen to 6% of all withdrawals, 3 times the pre-pandemic rate. People are eating their retirement savings while they are still working because their current income cannot cover their current expenses. And when they reach 65 or 70, there will be nothing left, and they will be Walter Carpenter, clearing dishes, climbing stairs, broke and poor, and still working. Because the system that was supposed to catch them dismantled the net while they were still on the tightrope. Every fluorescent lit office in America is full of people who know the system is broken and cannot leave it. A husband goes to work in an office 8 hours a day. A wife goes to work 8 hours a day. The kids go to school 8 hours a day. Everyone comes home burnt out. The child has 3 hours of homework and sports. The family gets maybe 2 hours together before bed. And then they get 2 days out of 7 that are completely free. That is the American schedule. That is the structure of a life that was designed in the industrial era for factory workers and has been applied without modification to knowledge workers who spend their days in pointless meetings, reading pointless emails, sitting under yellow fluorescent lights, typing on keyboards, staring at screens, and being micromanaged by bosses who measure productivity by the number of hours a body occupies a chair rather than the quality of the work that body produces. And the people inside that system know it is broken. Microsoft's Work Trend Index found that 46% of the global workforce feels burned out. Gallup has documented for decades that at any given time, up to 50% of the workforce is not engaged at work. Half of all workers at any moment are doing the bare minimum because the system has drained them of the energy, the motivation, and the hope that their effort will translate into a life that feels worth the cost of living it. LinkedIn found that 43% of employees cited the lack of career development and limited advancement as their reason for leaving. They are not leaving because they are lazy. They are leaving because they looked ahead on the trajectory their career offered them and saw 25 more years of the same fluorescent lights, the same pointless meetings, the same micromanaging boss, the same salary that does not cover the same bills, ending in a retirement. They cannot afford in a country that does not value their decades of labor. And the people who stay are not staying because they are satisfied. They are staying because they are trapped. The health insurance is tied to the job. The 401k match is tied to the job. The mortgage payment requires the paycheck. The child care costs require both paychecks. The auto payment requires the commute. The commute requires the car. The car requires the insurance. The insurance requires the income. And the income requires the job. Every financial obligation in the American household is a chain link connecting the worker to the desk. And every chain link was forged by a cost increase that the worker did not ask for and cannot control. You do not stay in a job you hate because you lack ambition. You stay because the cost of leaving is homelessness, and the cost of staying is your health, your time, your relationships, and the slow erosion of the person you used to be before the system consumed you. A woman in Virginia told the internet that she works for a very big corporation and still cannot afford to buy a home where she works and pays taxes. A single mom, a full-time worker. She said it makes her so frustrated to be a single mom, to be a full-time worker, to actually do well at what she does and still not be able to have things of her own because the area does not pay its people what it costs to live in the area. She is not an outlier. She is the American economy in 2026. She is the system working exactly as it was designed. extracting maximum labor for minimum compensation. And she is giving up, not quitting, not walking out, just surrendering the expectation that effort will produce a result that resembles a life. The dream is not dead. It was never alive for most of the people who were told to chase it. And the 59.2% of Americans who still expect a high-quality life in 5 years are probably wrong too. Because the math does not support it. The policies do not support it. The prices do not support it. And the people who set those policies and those prices have never, not once experienced what it feels like to sit under fluorescent lights doing someone else's busy work for a paycheck that does not cover your rent, wondering when exactly you gave up and whether anybody noticed when you did. And this is what the statistics cannot capture. The feeling of being trapped inside a system that you can see is failing you, but that you cannot leave because leaving costs more than staying. A woman compared her relationship with the American economy to an abusive relationship she cannot escape because she has to pay the electric company, has to buy groceries, has to pay for insurance, has to buy gas, has to pay rent. And the only way out would require every human being to stop participating simultaneously, which will never happen. That is not economic analysis. That is a coping mechanism. And it is the coping mechanism of millions of Americans who have concluded that the system was designed to extract maximum labor while providing just enough compensation to prevent departure, but never enough to build the independence that would make departure possible. The margin between survival and freedom has been shrinking for 40 years, as wages stagnated, costs exploded, pensions disappeared, unions dissolved, healthcare became unaffordable, housing became inaccessible, and the safety net was cut, thread by people who have never needed it. And someone's grandmother is sitting at the bus stop with her church clothes on and her suitcases because her disability and her pension no longer cover her rent and her bills. She is clean, she is well-dressed, she worked her entire life, and she is homeless at 75 because $1,500 for a regular apartment used to be considered luxury prices and is now the floor. And people will ask, where is her family? As if every elderly person in America has grandchildren nearby with a spare bedroom and the financial capacity to absorb another mouth to feed in an economy where their own children cannot afford the children they already have. The reservoir of American hope is draining, and nobody is refilling it, because the only thing that refills hope is evidence that effort produces results, and the evidence in 2026 says the opposite. Share this video with every American who is sitting in that chair right now, under those lights, in that meeting, doing that math at the kitchen table at 11 p.m., because they deserve to know that they are not alone, they are not crazy, and the exhaustion they feel is not a personal failure, it is a system failure. And 24.5 million fewer Americans believe things will get better than believed it 5 years ago. That is not pessimism. That is pattern recognition.